It is now 6:30 plus a couple of seconds. I'd like to call the Town of Mills River Planning Board meeting to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, tonight, the chair would like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda unless anyone has any changes or suggestions.
Make a motion, we approve.
All right, Mr. Oliver, we've got a motion.
Second.
And Mr. Foster has a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Approval of the minutes from the last meeting. If anyone, hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at those. If anyone would like to make a motion. Or if there are any
Brian didn't
updates
read
or
through all of
changes. So, okay, our grammarian, is that a word? Has grammar. So no changes been mentioned. Would anyone like to make a motion?
motion that the minutes from the prior meeting be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. A second.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Oliver, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. And moving right along, has there been any public comment? All right, unfortunately, we don't have any members of the public here tonight. We are going to discuss some items related to zoning and potential rezoning of property. So we would definitely like to have public input to help us understand the concerns of the public. Old business, it shows none. Do we have any old business?
No, I've since we initiated the rezoning, I just moved that to new business since the case has been established now.
Excellent. Okay. And now into new business. We have text amendment, text TXT-24-02, which would establish a rural residential MRRR, say that 3 times fast, zoning district.
So before I dive into that, just kind of one point of order for the board. You know, the last couple months, we've had a lot of kind of intense discussions, meaningful discussions back and forth. But we basically missed, there was no motion in the last meeting to authorize this text amendment because we were kind of moving so quickly. And so I just wanted to say going forward, you know, if we could pause between people speaking, try not to talk over each other, both for Patty and Arlie who take the minutes, but also just for staff's sake, because I did go through the video and the minutes and the board did not authorize this text amendment at the last meeting. Obviously, that was the board's intent, so staff moved forward with it. But before I present further, I'd like to have that motion on the record.
Okay, that's understandable. I apologize for missing that. Would there be a motion to authorize staff to prepare a text amendment to authorize or to establish a rural residential zoning district? Mr. Cole makes a motion.
Second.
And Mr. Foster seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now that that's taken care of, so planning board's directed staff to basically draft a new zoning district for the Mills River Rural Residential Zoning District. So mainly what staff did is we drafted zoning district language from scratch, but also using the R2R county district as the example. And that's what is in your packet as attachment A. The main thing for tonight is let's just go through it. I don't know how much you've read through it on your own already. I'm happy to go through it line by line. You know, we can just talk about each section. But again, it's kind of at the pleasure of the board how to proceed. So again, the intent is that we would apply this new zoning district through the R2402 rezoning action that was initiated at the last meeting to rezone areas of mixed use in the town that aren't compatible with the comp plan and future land use map. Again, this would be a down zoning and decrease of residential density, but the town's allowed to do that under state law. So yeah, the attachment A has the draft zoning district language. if you are comfortable, just in case, I prepared a draft planning board statement of consistency if you did want to move on that tonight, just in case. But again, I'm happy to go through it line by line and explain it, or we can take a second to read it. I'll leave it up to the board.
Yes, sir.
You and I both were in a council meeting the other night, and we need to bring this up about the, what we calling it? Overlay,
The 500-foot
500-foot
corridor.
overlay.
Yes.
We need to discuss that first, or?
I think maybe to establish a new zoning type, a new zoning district, we could go ahead and discuss that and determine if that's something that we want to recommend to council. And then we can discuss, because this isn't changing anything, it's just creating a new district. So once we've got that district on the books, then we could recommend to council if there's property that we would want to make become that new district. Is that kind of the
That's
way it would
correct.
go?
So if you have, I mean, you're welcome to discuss areas of town this could be applied to, but if you have concerns about allowing more uses or like, looking back at the corridor overlay, we should probably discuss that as part of agenda item C, the rezoning action.
So it is,
So
it's a
right-
very valid thing and we
yeah.
do need to discuss
We
it.
just need to, that's
I
what
do,
make
we
sure.
do need to discuss it.
we-
Thanks.
we
Yeah,
don't
thanks for
forget it.
bringing that up because that's and reminding us.
There has been some talk.
There's some concern, I'm
Yeah.
sure. And that's why it would really be nice to have public comment on this. But to establish the zoning, I'm comfortable with doing that. And if the board would please to have Mr. Malachek go ahead and read it into the official record so that it would be there, on the video, if you don't mind.
Not at all. All right, let me dive in. So the first page, and actually let me put it up on the screen as well. So if people are listening, they can view that. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right. So the first page is the only part of the ordinance that exists in the code now that we're actually editing. So that's where I did the track changes. So this is just a list of the use districts the town has established. And you can see I just bumped down light industrial and created rural residential. Not much exciting there. The next page, pages 2 and beyond, I did not do track changes, but I didn't want it to be covered in blue and underlined. This is all brand new language. So let me just read through this and scroll to the correct section. So again, the MRRR Rural Residential District, the purpose is to facilitate orderly development in rural areas not well served by public utilities where the primary uses of land are single-family residential on large lots, agricultural, and rural light commercial uses. This district is meant to allow uses compatible with the town's rural areas while also maintaining the rural and small town character of the community. So the first section under A are the permitted by right uses. So you get a zoning permit, as long as you meet our basic zoning standards, you would get approval for any of these. Single family dwellings, which could include manufactured homes, mobile homes, stick-built homes, accessory dwelling units conforming to the standards that I've established on the back, the last pages of this document, duplexes, religious institutions and churches, cemeteries, signs not more than 4 square feet in area, customary accessory buildings, garages, greenhouses, workshops, etc., farm and produce stands, family care homes, family child care homes, child care facilities, club or lodge, community building, adult daycare facilities, public facilities and public buildings associated with a governmental or public entity providing a public service, indoor commercial shooting range and weapon sales, riding stables, parks and public recreational facilities, golf courses and or country clubs, camping and low-impact camps, bed and breakfasts, incidental home occupations, group 1 and 2 communication towers, which are like hobby radio towers or very low height communications towers. Solar panels allowed with a minor special use permit. This is something that's in MR30 and most of our other zoning districts, so I put it in here as well. Wind turbines via major special use permit. That's another one that's in MR30 and all of our other zoning districts that I brought in. And then B is uses allowed with a major special use permit. So these are uses that would be allowed with a major special use permit approval from town council upon them finding that all of the, conditions and requirements for a special use are met by the applicant. And this is up for discussion. This is, again, just something I pulled in from our MR30 and other zoning districts. Planned residential developments, single-family residential cluster developments, medical institutional care developments, group 6 communications towers, which are much taller, larger ones, structured home environments, manufactured home parks, and tiny home parks, park model parks, and RV parks. Then there's uses allowed with a minor special use permit. So again, this would be a special use permit from the Board of Adjustment, as long as the applicant proves they met the standards of the ordinance. So landscaping materials, sales and storage, self-storage facilities, machining, assembly, and service operations in an enclosed building of 10,000 square feet or less of gross floor area. That's straight from R2R. Offices, kennel and animal boarding facilities, automobile services and repair garages excluding open storage of junked and or inoperable vehicles, and then transformer and public utility stations with some specific development requirements listed. And again, that was copied from MR30 and some of our other zoning districts. And then something to pay attention to are the dimensional requirements, so lot size, setback, etc. So for non-residential commercial properties, minimum lot area 1.5 acres, maximum building size 10,000 square feet, since there was that line that mentioned machining operations in a building of 10,000 square feet or less, maximum building height 50 feet, minimum front yard setback. I kept the ones we already have in mixed use, so from a major street or a setback from Boylston Highway, it's 75 feet for front yard. If it's just a private road or another street, it's 60 feet in the front yard, and then 30 feet setbacks for the side and rear. And again, those are for principal buildings or structures. And then, and I will say I did make some changes on my own based on some of the feedback I got from council at that meeting. So under this note here, I said the minimum lot size shall not apply to lots basically platted before the town existed, but I also said nor lots which have been platted, recorded, and approved by the town of Mills River prior to the effective date of this ordinance. So if you have a lot that's subdivided tomorrow and you don't have an acre and a half, and again, this is just for non-residential, but it repeats for residential, you're still permitted to develop it. So moving on, dimensional requirements for residential. Minimum lot area 1.5 acres, maximum density 1.5 acres per principal dwelling unit, maximum building size not defined. That's the way mixed use has it now. Maximum building height 40 feet. And then these are new, and I kind of tried to balance the residential building setbacks with what R2R had and compared to our existing zoning ordinances. So right now in mixed use, there's no setback requirements for any residential structure whatsoever. So just as a starting point, I'm proposing minimum front yard setback from major street like Boylston Highway, 40 feet, front yard setback from any other street, 30 feet, and then rear and side setback 15. The last major item are the standards for an accessory dwelling unit. Again, this is not built into our code and would not apply to other zoning districts, just this one until we do until we adopt the UDO or do a much larger text amendment. But this is what I found was the most common and what I felt fit Mills River the best. Scroll down. So only one accessory dwelling unit shall be permitted and only on a lot containing a principal single-family dwelling in the MRRR rural residential zoning district. The accessory dwelling unit shall not be considered a separate dwelling for the purpose of determining maximum residential density or minimum lot size. The maximum size of an accessory dwelling unit shall be 1,000 square feet or 60% of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, whichever is less. The accessory dwelling shall adhere to building setback requirements for principal buildings. The accessory dwelling unit may be located within the same structure as the principal dwelling, but must have a separate entrance. And then if it's in a separate structure, it shall be located behind the principal dwelling, because if you have a single family home, that's the principal use. You don't want to have an accessory dwelling in front of it. And there shall be one parking space provided for the accessory dwelling. Mobile homes, manufactured homes, travel trailers, campers, tiny homes, park models, RVs, and similar units are not allowed as accessory dwellings. The accessory dwelling unit can't be subdivided off from the parcel and can't be deeded or conveyed to a different owner. It has to remain on that parcel with the principal dwelling in perpetuity. And then really the last section are just our standard buffer and screening requirements that are in every zoning district. And that's the end of the draft.
I do have a question, and I apologize if I missed it. Is tiny home defined somewhere?
Yes.
I've forgotten. I know I've read it, but what,
Currently in major special use permit only though, in mixed use, right? Today.
well, that's yeah, and that would be a
You're
tiny
talking about
home
the definition of
development.
the unit.
What is the unit?
Oh,
What-
sorry.
That's okay.
A unit,
Sure.
the tiny home unit, under state guidance from the fire marshal and I think the state insurance commission, they don't count as they don't count as permanent dwellings. So that's one of the reasons they're not allowed as an accessory dwelling, because they're not meant for permanent habitation. Tiny homes are still, there's no single construction standard for them. They're built a bunch of different ways by a bunch of different builders, but commonly it's on a chassis. So
Okay.
like a mobile home, like a camper. So it's technically still considered almost like a recreational vehicle. And park models kind of fall into the same category. They're park models. I think there is a construction standard some of them are built to, but it's not uniform. And again, they're not usually meant for permanent habitation.
Okay, that's what I was just trying to reconcile in my head, because if 1,000 square feet is the maximum size, and so I would think, well, you can go smaller than that. But the key here is that the tiny home is not meant to be permanent, and it's on some sort of a chassis. It's
Correct.
built off premise,
Correct.
probably. Like,
If I'm not mistaken, the health department won't let you permanently hook those up in your yard to your septic.
Well, it's happened. So.
Yeah, oh, no, yeah.
but someone could build a 500 square foot home, accessory dwelling unit,
Exactly.
as long as it met everything else in the code.
And these are the standards we're using as a starting point. In other codes, I mean, the square footage limit, I saw 800, I saw 1,000. You know, we have a lot of large homes in Mills River. I just didn't want to penalize, I guess, individuals or lots with a smaller principal dwelling.
Mhm.
So I think in a previous meeting, I had said, 800 square feet or like 40% of the principal dwelling. But, if you live in a 1,200 square foot home, 40% ain't much. And
60% isn't much of that either.
yeah, Asheville allows up to 70 or 75%. But again, just trying to find a middle ground to start. with.
Sure.
I had a question, Mike, on item 22, attached A. What would be the definition of a incidental home occupation?
Home it is defined in our ordinance currently. It's basically, and I might be off by a couple percent, but it's a business run out of your home that's incidental and secondary to the principal use as a dwelling. So you can use 20 or 25% of your floor area for an office, let's say. But you don't have customers there, you know, you're not running an open business, you're doing work, let's say for a consulting firm. Or even you have your own rural business, maybe with a workshop. But again, the primary use of land is residential. And so that's why it's called incidental, because it's incidental to the residential use.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a number of questions, having read through here. And anybody else jump in whenever. Some things I just want to know that I don't know, which would help me in the future here. But what is a single-family residential cluster development?
A single family residential cluster development, it's never been, I don't think one's ever been permitted, but it basically allows smaller lot sizes. So instead of 30,000 square foot lots, 20,000 square foot lots in exchange for lower density. So
Yeah,
right,
green space out and about, like a patio home. Some people call them patio homes. Same.
well, no, it's basically to allow smaller lot sizes in exchange for preserved areas, something like that. But the trade-off is pretty minimal because you're only getting 10,000 square feet off of your minimum lot size. And then the density, let's just use mixed use as an example. Right now, we're 30,000 square foot minimum lots and 30,000 square foot per dwelling for both planned residential development and single family residential cluster. You can do 20,000 square foot lot sizes, but across the whole parcel, your density is 1 per 40,000. So it's actually lower density, but like it says, allows you to cluster housing on slightly smaller lots to preserve land or something.
Doesn't Henderson County already do that?
It's possible.
I thought I read somewhere.
I
they
don't
did.
know.
We have a lot of neighborhoods that do that.
They do?
So to get it in my head and understand, that would be if I had a big piece of land, say 400,000 square feet,
Mhm.
I could get 10 lots of 20,000 square foot each. Then the other 200,000 square feet would be preserving something. It would be the area that would not be built on, and it would be preserved,
Be
and it would not,
undeveloped.
the 20,000 square foot lots would have homes on them and sold individually
Mhm.
and subdivided, but that 200,000 square feet would be reserved. That's roughly 5 acres, 4.5 acres.
And it could, yeah, and it could be done for topographical concerns too. Let's say there's 2 streams on a property and your only buildable area is this little section in the middle. Well, again, the trade-off is we'll give you a slightly smaller lot size, but overall, you actually have to build fewer units.
Okay.
And again, for my benefit, not knowing this, what's the difference between a minor special use permit and a generally
Yeah.
major special use permit?
Minor goes to the Board of Adjustment. There's the same standards you need to meet, you know, making sure the development doesn't negatively affect the public health and welfare. Major special use permit, there's a lot more application and plan, like development plan requirements, and you need approval from council. So
Okay.
typically the higher impact developments like the townhomes would be major special use permits that go to council. And then smaller special use permits are lower impact ones. Like a good example, I guess, would be the air traffic control tower for the airport. That land zone light industrial, but obviously our industrial district doesn't consider air traffic control towers, you know, none would. And so there's a provision in that zoning district that says if the Board of Adjustment makes a finding under a special use permit, you can allow that use.
While he's looking for his next one, do we already have definitions for camping and low impact camps? A20, we already have that somewhere.
I know we define a camp. I believe we do not define,
Camping or a camp could be,
yeah, I don't think we define low impact. And again, that's just because that's how it was phrased in R2R.
I like having that there. I just, in my head, I have a picture of what that is and I'm
No,
worried someone else might have a different, you know.
you're right, it does need to be defined. That'd probably be something we follow up and tackle as part of the UDO project.
Okay.
But if this were adopted, because again, with the zoning districts, sections of the code, there is no definition section. It pulls from the main zoning ordinance definitions. It would have to be a separate text amendment just to establish that.
Could I have one comment and I just need to get it clear? What we're discussing tonight, and I remember something from the council meeting that, feedback, I guess you could say, that, we need to hear directly from the residents on these things, potential areas of rezoning we're talking about. And, we talked about having a joint meeting with council. So where do we need to go with the discussion? Do we need to continue that? But do we need to wait till we have that joint meeting or get this feedback from the public before we proceed or what?
That's actually all, just like your previous question, that's actually all in agenda item C for the rezoning action. So there's
Yeah.
a specific
Well, I
item.
just-
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'm just saying that, yeah, there's a specific item on your agenda that says discuss public input options and
Yeah.
discuss rezoning options in areas. And so that's when I was planning to address that.
If we approve this new zoning district, it doesn't impact a single individual at the moment. It's just a new district.
It's just,
creates it.
Right,
That's it.
once we begin to recommend it be applicable, that's when we would want public input, I assume.
yeah, I mean, again, in the public input, we can still ask questions about uses and all of that. But you're correct. This is just establishing language in the code for a new zoning district that will not be applied to anyone until the rezoning action is finalized.
I mean, all of these things seem to fit except number 2 under minor special use permit. If we're talking about maintaining the rural nature of Mills River, then, self-storage doesn't seem to.
Well, I have question marks at 2, 3, and 4. Since you're going there with that, those were where my question marks were on usage, or
Right.
allowed usage. And not a hard no, just trying to talk about it. Self-storage, those can get pretty big. And wipe out the rural. If anyone followed the Crab Creek storage shed issue in Henderson County, what a debacle. The next one, machining enclosed at 10,000. I mean, 10,000 is a pretty good footprint for an enclosed building. And those are almost always one floor. And then the third one, I probably am okay with, but I wondered if we didn't talk about limiting sizes on that. Offices, business, professional, public. I mean, that could be a 800-foot long strip mall. If I'm right, right? Right, not retail, but they could be.
So how does that work if it's a strip shopping center, non-retail, and the minimum lot size is 1.5 acres? I mean, they have to have whatever the size of that building is, has to fit within, so it could be 10 acres minimum based on the size of the building, correct?
Professional services.
Right, and that, I guess that's why I was asking.
It's highly unlikely because you couldn't fill the tenants out without some kind of retail. So it's probably unlikely, but. So and again, I'm just asking, what everyone else's thoughts are on those three, or the three that come to me right away.
My last question, and I don't want to smack the hornet's nest, but here goes. you know, I know we've debated back and forth on, you know, minimum lot size, and when we left here, 2 acres. When you actually presented it to council, you said 2 acres. I know Jeff's had some heartache about that,
I got a little hard.
you know,
with
less than
yeah.
that and so forth. I'm wondering how we came up with the 1.5 acres, unless
did-
that matches R2R.
No, I made that change based on the feedback from the council meeting.
Yeah, I was there. I mean, I don't remember him saying anything specific about it should be less than 2 acres, but and it's not, it's up for debate. I mean, there's valid reasons that maybe it should be 1.5 rather than 2 or whatever. I was just bringing that up as
Mhm.
certainly something that once we agree on it, we all agree on it, you know, even if it's 1.5 acres, so.
What, there's only a couple people that weren't there that night, because I think 5 of us were there. And
Yeah.
that was the immediate
That was our
pushback of,
joint
wow,
meeting.
2 acres, you could just kind of, all of them were like, wow. But to whoever made this point at the last meeting that we had, that they beat us down just by a couple of reactions there. Are we going to get beat down every time? And should we account for that going into this?
Yeah,
I mean, I hope we end up at a minimum of 1.5 acres. You know, the immediate response with 2 acres, you know, wow. I'd love to see it 2 acres for the record. I'd love to.
I'll disagree a little bit. I don't know if the reaction was as strong on the acres as it was on nothing but residential in South Mills River. But there was concern about, well, we should get the feedback. I think Jim mentioned that from folks who live in that area about not having any additional commercial uses. So that was just
The commercial crossroads that we
Right.
talked about removing at the southern end, that was the other pushback that they felt they might like to see that stay. I think it was Gash, or maybe they said Brickyard.
well, Gash, they wanted to see stay. I don't know about
Yes, I
Brickyard.
think
I
it was
mean, not
Brickyard,
Brickyard, but Ray Hill. So
Or is it Ray Hill? Sorry, Ray Hill.
Can I have one other comment?
But I think Michael, where that goes, I mean, we can talk about changing the 1.5 to 2 or 1 or whatever.
Everything is up for discussion, yeah. I mean, the 3 things, it's for, again, agenda item C, but the 3 points I had written down in my staff report were, there was a concern about limiting uses too strictly, a concern about the new larger minimum lot size and lower density affecting residents, and that we have to get public input. Those were my 3 takeaways. And so I just used my discretion and tried to massage this, again, to the best middle ground starting point. But I mean, all of this is up for debate. And again, it's completely up to you how you want to proceed.
and I get that. And so I had a question. So, and I don't even know, first of all, thank you for all your work, which I should have said up front. This is great. Is there a way, and I'll use English, I don't know what the legal terminology would be to say prior to a given date, like the adoption of this, that if we chose 2 acres, for example, that anybody who owned 2 acres, I'm sorry, 4 acres or less, because you couldn't divide it. If you had less than 4 acres, you couldn't divide it and meet the 2 acre minimum, right? So is there a way to build into a zoning that any land less than 4 acres, in my example, where the 2 acre minimum we adopt, that you can divide property less than 4 acres as long as the remaining properties meet the current density of whatever it is, 60,000 square feet or 0.6 of an acre. And what I'm thinking about is, think
So a
about you,
property,
actually.
yeah, what I
So,
was saying,
and if somebody owned 3 acres, they couldn't divide it under the new 2 acre guideline, but if they divided it in half, it would be 1.5 acres. But let's say they divided it in thirds, it would be less than that. So as long as it met the current guidelines of, which is roughly what, 0.6 of an acre, correct? Yeah. No, current now. In other words, if somebody owned land prior to the adoption of this that was less than 4 acres, they can't subdivide it without it being less than 2 acres. Can you put some language in there that says that if you owned it prior to this date, you could subdivide it and it be less than, yeah, as long as that subdivision or the remaining lots, once it's divided, meet the current guidelines.
so what if then it said, what if you had to have 2 acres plus 30,000? So I guess that's 2.6, 2 point. Is that right? 30,000 square feet.
2.689 something.
Okay, so you would have to have then more than 2 acres if you did it that way. Or if, so.
It was just a
see,
thought. It can
one
be
of-
massaged
at
as
least
well, so.
One of the properties had to be the size that we choose in the
You
ordinance.
could do that.
And then the other one could be no smaller than 30,000 square feet.
Is that the current?
I don't know. That's
Yes.
the current. Does that make sense? Even then, so if your property's, that's starting to get complicated. I'm an engineer.
It's
so-
it's the idea. We can simplify, but it's the idea that I thought of.
That would be a lot of, I mean, Michael, there's going to be a period between, there's going to be months in there where we, in theory, we couldn't stop somebody. They see that we passed this, town council passes it, but we don't apply it to a district yet. They can go out there and go apply, they can go subdivide it right then while we're dragging our feet for several months before it's enacted.
Yeah,
All they have to do is submit an application, which is good for what period of time? 12
6
months.
6 months. Well, once you get subdivision approval, it's good for 2 years.
2 years. So the point there is even, somebody had said something to me, what about that one person who we know is dividing that one place? And we already know about that. Well, that person's probably smart enough to go get a surveyor out there in a hurry, and they're not going to have to worry about this.
so my follow-up question to that is, without, that does take a lot of detail on what would work and so forth, but I'm just thinking about those folks who've been here a while, who own things less than 2 acres or 4 acres or whatever. So the next question I have is, let's say we adopt this, and let's say we adopt it as it is. It can be amended in the future, right? To add something like I just asked about.
And
Exactly.
in fact,
Okay.
after it goes through the public hearings of town council, we don't want to set it up for town council to make the decision necessarily, but that may be where it gets the public input. And then it may come back to us after that public input, or I'm sure council could direct changes and then adopt it. But
Either of those is possible.
either of those is possible.
Yeah, and to Brian's point, I don't know if that
So-
was your point. If we keep, nibbling here, nibbling there, it'll be, 2050 before we do this, and we don't want that to be the case. So I was just curious if something like that could be done.
I
So-
might add, I watched the council meeting online and I noticed that too, that the feedback about the 2 acres, that it didn't appear to me that it went over that well. And, I think the 1.5 acres would be more practical due to the scarcity of land. If you search around this area, I know people that build, they're desperately looking for land to build on. And the land is scarce. So, there's other sides to the coin.
Yeah, and I guess my whole point was, I don't know if my mic's on. Again, what's going to preserve as much as possible the rural nature of Mills River. I get that, but Michael's words right here, where it decreases the residential density by more than half. So that does at 1.5, right? At 1.5, yeah. So, but yeah, what will pass matters as well, right?
True.
To answer your question, Mr. Cole, you could build something in. I guess the more simpler example would work, that if you have an existing lot platted before this date, you could divide it into 30,000 square foot lots. I think it gets more complicated when you start having differing standards for subdivision of different lots on the same parcel.
Yeah, I was going to use, I told you I'd use my language, but
Yeah,
and
But it's possible.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it just makes sense, because if someone's been here for 50 years and they have 3 acres and they have children, and and we set a standard that 50 years hence, they should have the ability to divide it. But yeah, we don't want to slow this down for that. I was just asking the question.
That I'll also just throw in, we have a family subdivision process, which is 1/4 of our normal fee and fewer requirements. You could also basically say family subdivisions, if it's being deeded to a bona fide family member. I mean, again, that's subdivision code updates, but that would only have to apply with the 30,000 if you didn't want to affect, again, families deeding lots to children or someone else.
That sounds a little better to me.
I have
Yes.
one.
Sounds a
other
lot
thing I
better.
wanted to bring up on Exhibit A, item number, excuse me, 25. wind turbines. Several years ago, we had a lot of discussion about wind turbines. And if I remember correctly, I think there's very few locations in Mills River that could be used for a wind turbine. But I'm adamantly against any wind turbine in Mills River. Is there some way we can write that in, take this out? Wind turbines are allowed.
They're already allowed in other current zoning districts, though, I believe.
Yeah, well, again, I just
I
took the
know
language.
so, and I remember it was a limited time of places we could have a wind turbine.
Well, the
Yeah.
setbacks is the issue. They
Well,
can't fall anywhere near a property
Noise is a
line.
big issue. I've seen a few.
Yeah.
And if you investigate a little bit, the cost of one and the lifespan is not that long, and the cost of building one and taking it down, what you're gonna do with it, dispose of it. What's possible.
The wind patterns around here,
That-
as of yet, don't really support turbines that well.
That was brought up, this was several years ago, and it was talked about, it was narrowed down to wind patterns, it's not desirable, of course, but I just can get rid of it.
Yeah, if it's the consensus of the planning board, I can strike that. I just copied it because, like Mr. Ross said, they're allowed under all zoning districts under major special use permit, so I just brought that in.
I just like to say, don't even think about it.
Well, with the, what do you call your statement of intent there in the front here, the purpose of the district? I think that's going to be an important argument for any point we're trying to push. That first paragraph at the top of the second page of attachment A. The purpose of the district to facilitate orderly development in rural areas, that paragraph. I think that's going to be the basis for an entire argument of no matter what we're asking for. And I think we need to be able to, yours are in a different order here. He's
Oh,
looking
there
at me
you
like
go.
he can't find it.
There you go. I
There you
got
go. Mine are front and back.
There's two attachment
Oh,
A's. I may
okay.
have mixed it up.
That's why I read the first few
Same
sentences.
thing.
I think whatever we describe this, the intention, our
Sure.
intentions or the purpose of this new district, we have to be able to basically reference any bullet point, whether it's turbines or storage buildings or setbacks or whatever it is. Is it supported? Is that supported by this initial purpose that we're stating here? Because that needs to be, in my opinion, needs to be our entire argument of what we're trying to do here, keeping, and I think you can put it in there, Michael, the last sentence, this district is meant to allow uses compatible with the town's rural areas while also maintaining the rural and small town character. So I think anything we talk about, does it fit? Does it fall under that?
Well, I don't think wind turbines are compatible. with this.
Now,
So-
are we discussing the large commercial power plant wind turbines?
Or
Bert,
grandma's
You
window.
can buy one,
No,
and
it-
put up,
yeah,
if
can
you want to live off the grid and
Yeah,
have a, couple kilowatts there.
Well, I think the
Well,
difference there is someone wants individual use.
That's
I'm a huge fan of that.
individual.
If they want a farm of them, I'm not a fan of that.
well, one of the big ones that I've seen.
Yeah, the 200-foot
Those are
tall.
yeah,
One
huge.
is too many for me.
So maybe you just need for personal use versus commercial use or something like that.
Right.
And maybe that falls, because that first paragraph, and I just keep going back to that, maintaining the rural and small town character.
Well, and that's. if somebody
Everything has
wants
to be argued with that in mind. Otherwise, we're just talking out of both sides of our mouth.
Well,
the
I
public.
agree. I mean, this all started with the 2040 map, which was called rural residential. And that's where, and again, Michael, thank you for all your work. I'm not going to try to counter you here, but I'm going to bring up a point. But, it says desirable. This is on an attachment for something else, but, and this isn't new. I mean, so it says parks and public space, trails, recreation, agriculture, and estate lots. And then acceptable civic, community, school, single family residential, but not desirable industrial, commercial, or multifamily. So, should we exclude that? Anything in here that's a bullet point related to industrial, commercial, multifamily? I know there was a little bit of a pushback on that from council. But there's also a comment, and I won't get it exactly verbatim, But the pendulum is swung this way and now we're trying to swing it too far back the other way, but not really. We're just trying to fill in the details of the map that's been in existence for 3 years.
I will
So-
say that what several of us got up and spoke in that meeting, and the one thing that we, that the residents need to be able to speak throughout this, probably multiple points. But they already have spoken out loudly, and it's that future land use map. It's the comprehensive plan. They've already given us the guidance, I'm sorry, for what you just read. That's what they want to see. So that's why I put my question marks, and I didn't with the windmills, but the turbines, but the self-storage, the machining, and the offices. And I'm just, if anything on this list, and Michael knows how much we appreciate this, we have to start somewhere, and that's what this is. This is the next.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
But I would say each bullet point needs to be critiqued that way. Is this satisfying what the residents have said they want to see? Or is it countering it?
Well, do we have a consensus about, let's address the wind turbine issue. Do we have a consensus that commercial versus individual use? I mean, if somebody wants to
Yeah.
put up something and gain a few watts, run a couple light
If it's
bulbs,
producing too much property to be used internally on that parcel, it's too much, right?
We might want to exclude agriculture again in this,
That-
because I think I saw a greenhouse here that has a small wind turbine, like the greenhouse, power, or maybe it's a water pump, irrigation, that's what it was.
Okay, well,
Things of that nature,
Mhm.
Agriculture might would need it.
it's hard to get more rural than a
And they'd be exempt under just the
water
blanket
turbine, yeah.
town agricultural zoning
Under the
exemption.
blanket.
I just wanted to add that so we don't have a definition of a wind turbine, but the ordinance does have a definition for large wind energy system, which is a wind energy conversion system consisting of one or more wind turbines, towers, and associated control or conversion electronics, which has a rated capacity of more than 20 kilowatt. So, yeah, just food for
So-
thought.
If we change that to disallow that or allow something that's not 20 kilowatts or something, I don't know. I don't know how many people are going to go out and spend $5,000 or $10,000 for a personal wind turbine, but
I mean, the easiest, if it's the board's pleasure, would just be to strike it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not gonna need a zoning permit to put up a 2 kilowatt turbine on top of your house
Right.
anyway.
Right. Okay.
Unless you're connecting it to the grid.
okay. Because there are, people
That's
like
what I
to
was
have,
referring to. I don't want to be selling back to the grid on this. And I know y'all just said there's no wind. Don't tell my wife that, because in the front of our house, it's crazy windy right down the gut of the valley. In the back of our house, nothing,
Well, the streets.
nothing.
that's right. I don't have enough wind at my place.
I mean, there's not a tree between, my house and here though. So the wind right there is
Right.
weird.
If you go, here in the park, it's.
Well,
windy.
here we
Yeah.
got wind.
The bottom, the low elevation with no trees, and it just sucks right down here. It's the valley. We're in a huge valley.
So do we need to vote on that?
Consensus.
It's not going to
yeah,
touch the agricultural exclusions anyway, right?
Right. And
I mean, if an agricultural user wanted
We
to
can't say
erect
no.
a 20 kilowatt turbine, there's nothing we could do about it.
That's a
but if they
different
powered the
conversation.
farm
But
off
if it
of
powers
it,
a farm,
Well,
There
you
you
can have a
rain,
farm.
shine, they got power as long as the wind's blowing.
So is the board okay if we
Yes.
strike 25?
I am.
Yes, just
Yeah.
agree.
Okay. I'll
So we're sticking on usage for a minute here, right? Michael? I'm sorry. Well, the retail that we talked about not allowing, there's a slight contradiction to that, slight number 16 into the indoor commercial shooting range. There is an and weapon sales. I personally am fine with that.
I was going to say, now let's be careful
Okay,
here.
No. I personally am fine with that. I just don't, are we contradicting ourselves saying
That's a hobby.
it's a hobby? Nice. That's going to be my excuse next time I buy.
And
Uh-huh.
it's in R2R.
Okay. It's probably fine the way it is. I can tell you, I'm fine with it. I own more guns than probably everyone sitting here. But the question is, are we contradicting ourselves and creating? Yeah.
And they
do.
provided the training to teach safety and, mhm.
I definitely want the use there. I do. I mean,
You should build one.
yeah, I have the place. It's a little windy though. I might need a turbine.
With,
I see and I just,
Would it be the board's pleasure to have it read indoor commercial shooting range with weapon sales on the same site?
with the on-site weapon sales, yeah, that would make me feel better. Yeah. I don't want, I can tell you, I'm not picking on anybody on our town council. Jeff Young's gonna read every single word in this about 10 times, and he's gonna have questions on every one of these little things. And he should. I mean, he was elected for that. Not that
So-
others won't, but I promise you
so
Jeff will.
Is there consensus if I make that change?
Yes.
so how's it going to read again? Indoor commercial?
Indoor commercial shooting range with on-site weapon sales. And it would be one use.
And if
You
they
don't
may or
have
may
to
not.
sell
sell,
weapons. It
With
could
or
be
without.
arranged.
With or without. Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
We don't want to leave ourselves open to just a big gun retail frontage. Yeah, I don't want to contradict. Right. Yeah, this mission statement up here, I want it to be, is it,
Okay, how?
yes, I
how-
want it,
How we gonna word it now? In,
Indoor commercial shooting range with or without on-site weapon sales.
with or with it.
Yeah.
So,
they're not required to sell
No.
weapons just because they have a shooting range.
Right.
and the chances of a large retailer moving to, 5,000 feet off of NC 280 in South Mills River, probably pretty slim. We're talking someone who really just does it as a hobby and gets their licenses, appropriate license, provides training. We're not talking a huge retailer, which, um, yeah,
So going through this, is that a better way to do it, Jeff? Just to, since we're bouncing around 1, 3, 16, 22, 14, just keep going in order here,
let's
just
go in order.
get a consensus of a quick nod or, writing stables. I
If
think
there are
everyone will
any
be a
que-
quick yes on that.
No problem with riding stables. It's
Right. So I
pretty
don't know if you
rural.
want to just keep doing that instead of
Writing.
for the
statements
sake of
and-
organization and 720.
Okay. As you go through, I mean, if you don't have an issue with any of them, that's number 17. That's the last. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you got
Excuse me.
pages.
More
Parks,
parks. and,
public, recreational. And that's really if the town decides to acquire some land there and build a park. I mean, I guess a private individual could, but also it protects the town because, the town does abide by zoning.
Technically, we have a private park here in town already,
So-
right? The trees, the woods up there, that private, what is that place called?
That's been sold, right?
No, it doesn't matter. We do have one.
Golf course and or country club. And camping and low impact camps.
I just wanted the definition to separate they're different things. A
You're not-
camp
We're not talking campground. in
versus camping, a
America.
campground. Those are, a camp could be a
se,
camp for kids, a
or
camp
other.
for what? A camp
Right.
for rockets?
Something that's low
I'm not sure that's
impact.
a low impact, but
Uh-huh.
I think there should be some definition around camps and camping. But I'm fine with them being, I'd love to see, camp, actual tents
Say
and
it's different. The definition of camping.
very different.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Camping to me was traveling in a luxury motorhome and luxury camping was my wife.
I wonder if we
One of
should say
the color
short
TVs
term.
didn't work, but wrong.
Sound like
say
Air
short-term
Force
camping?
field conditions there.
Something, you think that, if we said short-term camping, remember over at Transylvania County, over at the Etowah, remember there was an issue about the RV parks that would be they were gonna move in, or they looked in the, put next to the golf course. And those are more of a longer term. People leave them, you know, to come up for the summer and they stay there pretty much year round. But I wonder if the camping and low impact camps, we put something like short term?
There's also a type of use called glamping,
Yeah.
the glamorized camping, and
But camping
I've
doesn't
been
say
involved in a couple of
campgrounds. We're not talking about campground, right?
That's what I was asking for, was definition.
It's
I was
not
like,
defined.
Okay.
Don't wanna see-
The only thing in our code right now that's defined is camp, which is organized camp establishments which provide food or lodging accommodations of tents or cabins for groups of children or adults engaged in organized recreational or educational programs, shall include but not limited to camps with special program emphases such as horseback riding, conservation, music and sports, et cetera, does not include manufactured home parks, migrant labor camps, or RV parks.
Can we just
That's-
change this number 20 to low impact camps under that definition?
Or I could just say camp.
Camps, yeah, forget, yeah, the
Well, I would-
camping is too ambiguous to me.
I would put camping under like either minor or major special use
Okay.
permit.
Yeah.
Like maybe major special use permit in
Good.
case somebody wants a campground.
Camp,
We
as
don't
you
have
just
to-
described, I'd love to see one
Yeah.
of those. Yeah,
Yeah,
I could
that's
see
great.
short term with it.
Well, I wonder if, like the glamp, for example, or someone who wanted to have cottages or cabins as a rental facility, that seems to fall under the bed and breakfast potentially, which is the next one on the list. It seems like I think that those are different things, like a kind of, I think of like summer camp is kind of what you're describing in the definition of camp. That seems to be one thing. And then there seems to be another thing, which is this range of potentially, well, I think maybe could fall with bed and breakfast, but I personally don't see like rental cottages and rental cabins, bed and breakfast. That all seems to be, if done in a low density.
So are we
kind
okay
of
with
way.
changing 20 to the camp?
Yeah.
Or the definition Michael just gave?
Yes.
So consensus on changing 20 to just camp or camps.
Camp as defined in the code.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
What
good.
about my question again? The short term, why couldn't we do that?
So limiting,
Yes, because if we end up with long-term RVs sitting out in the field year after year, that could become a big problem.
But camp excludes RVs.
Yeah, this gets rid of that completely.
Yeah.
yeah,
The definition he
'Cause
just,
I agree with your concern.
yeah,
And this would get rid of that.
yeah. So that if we replace it with camp, it excludes RVs.
that's correct.
Okay.
So.
Camp
so-
as defined already, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
if we-
basically a
It's not
summer camp.
Not a
is what-
campground. So
Yeah.
it excludes that.
We
so.
accomplished what you wanted to
Right.
accomplish.
Good, good.
So they were good with that?
Yeah,
I
Okay.
am.
It was gonna just be camp.
right.
Camp.
So if you've got a piece of property back in the woods and you don't want to build on it, still okay to camp. That's a different camp, a different type camp.
A person camping individually?
Okay, there's
Moving
always,
on.
there's 1,000, and that's why this is so deliberate and that's why it's tedious and we can't get. So let's say I get a couple acres of land and it's back in the woods. And can't afford to build yet, but I want to go spend a weekend there. That's not regulated. That's not anything that would fall in any,
Camping on your own
I
land.
would consider that just private enjoyment.
if 20 people showed up with tents and started camping, that's a different thing.
For
So,
a fee.
yeah, for a fee. Now we've made it commercial. And then that becomes regulated. Okay. Just getting that out there, just,
So just kind of staying in order, is there
yeah,
anything
Bed and
between there and wind
breakfasts.
turbines? Because I know we had the wind turbines, but bed and breakfast, incidental home occupation, towers, panels, solar panels.
the group 1 and 2, those are smaller type towers. One thing we may start seeing is the smaller cell towers
Uh-huh.
in the rural areas.
What size is the one on Ladson for reference? for
That
me?
one, that would be one of the big ones, like a group 6 or bigger, or,
Oh, is it?
I mean,
Group 6, I think it's 250 feet
Or that one may not be that type.
Yeah.
That was pretty good sized.
Okay.
And that's a,
Just
that's
curious for
a
reference.
balancing act there. I
But
mean,
these are smaller is what you're saying.
yeah, and I'm saying that, in the cities, in Asheville, for instance, we were approached by, when I was there, and I don't know if they was ever approved or not, but on the tops of traffic signal posts that, they would have a small cell tower.
Relay.
And what it does is it just adds capacity. Because if you're downtown, if you're at a sporting event, go with me to a Clemson game, try to get on the internet, because everybody's on their phone instead of watching the excitement. And the bandwidth isn't there. So one of the ways that the companies, they add these smaller towers. There may be a time when they'll want to put smaller towers in some of the more rural areas just to add the bandwidth, add the coverage versus the huge towers.
I've seen
makes
towers,
sense.
cell towers disguised as trees. There's one down in Columbus on the way here.
Mhm.
It's part of a water tower.
Yeah.
that I know of.
So,
So as it's defined right now, Group 1 towers are exempt towers allowed in all districts which were constructed or permitted prior to the effective date of this ordinance. Towers for residential amateur radio which are less than 80 feet in height, or any tower less than 50 feet in height, are exempt. Group 2 is co-location or replacement. So if there's an existing cell tower or monopole tower and a new provider is putting their broadcasting equipment, or a provider is replacing their aging equipment, that would be permitted.
but to just go out into Mills River, rural residential and put up a new tower would be another process altogether. Go through the,
Right now, Group 6 towers, which are 250 feet or more, are the only ones requiring a special use permit, I believe. Anything 50 feet through 250 feet is an administrative staff. Some of them have public notice requirements, though.
but we all like our phones. So,
That's eliminated a lot of towers. I know was operating 5 current stores in 3 states. I had 2-way radio towers, 110-foot towers, all of them on top of the
Mhm.
store.
mhm.
But we wouldn't be using that again anymore.
Nope.
Use your cell phone.
Use your cell phone.
So under the major special use, the only question I had in that next section, B, was the tiny home parks, item number 7. What is the current? What's the current restrictions on that right now, Michael? So it's right where it is right now, where you have it.
And what is a structured home environment, number 5?
Something on site living
And we have some of those already, so.
So I should know the answer to this question. I know with minor special use, it's quasi judicial with the Board of Adjustment. Is it quasi judicial town council as well? Is it structured, the hearing structured? Okay. So if they meet it, then it has to be issued.
And that wouldn't go through the planning board even for a major. That would go,
Mhm.
that would go through the Board of Adjustment and then the council. Correct, straight. to
Doesn't go
council.
straight to or does it go to the Board of Adjustment at all? So section C is the minor use permits. Those are my questions 2, 3, and 4. Are they in contradiction to our mission statement here?
I think 2 is.
I think
2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4 could. I get the unlikeliness of the 800 square foot strip mall full of, attorneys and, whatever.
Service operations, would that include garages?
You're in
Service,
item
what kind of
6?
service? Yeah,
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're in
sorry,
3.
item 3.
3. Because 6 is automobile services and repair garages, and I like that being there. There is one down 280 for that matter,
Machining, assembly,
but 2, 3, and
that's a
4,
small business. Now, something like that would be better suited within the corridor. Correct?
I mean,
No,
are we
it
still
would
talking
be-
corridor or are we talking crossroads?
Yeah, it would be in the commercial crossroads, not the corridor. The corridor is just, the existing corridor, if I'm wrong, has nothing to do with anything other than what the,
Cosmetic.
yeah, what the exterior materials
Correct.
should be, so.
We had discussed at one time having a little bit more relaxed standards in the corridor. And I was wondering if I remember council talking about that. Is that something they were?
I keep going back to our future land
Interesting.
use map, and it's not corridor driven, it's crossroads driven and rural residential driven. It's not driven by anything to do with 280. That's strictly a cosmetic thing where I think the short intention of it was we didn't want people driving through town looking at ugly, just nonstop metal building after metal building. But the future land use map and the comprehensive plan are not, I mean, preserving rural. I think it was Lisa at the last meeting that said, are we talking about local residents driving the back roads and feeling rural, or the people driving down 280 and feeling rural? And I think the answer was both.
Both.
And I don't know when, Michael, you can put me off to B or C or whoever on this one, but the council, they did say one other thing in the notes that I had that they said was also, why are you limiting this to only part of the existing MU? And I think we responded with, we've had
Gotta
this
start
big
somewhere.
project coming and we're just trying to get some low hanging fruit right now.
Well, this could be incorporated in all of it, because all we're doing is creating the district. We're not
Yeah, this
voting.
is just the
That's the
Right,
next.
that's why I said this is probably
Yeah.
a future bullet
Yeah,
point here,
yeah.
but I'm trying to respond to Jeff pushing us back to the corridor, which you
Yeah.
can tell I don't want to be pushed back to. the
Right, I agree.
corridor. I want to stay away from that, even though that's where we started.
Well, offices, a small professional office, do we need to put a size on the offices if we do that? So we don't have an office complex?
I like that.
I mean, I don't see NVIDIA or one of the big companies, Microsoft, moving to South Mills River and building an office complex. But someone, let's say, an engineer, probably not a traffic engineer, wanted to have their own office and, a small, like the one here across from Mills River School.
Use me. What if I wanted to go put a real estate office on 280 in a little old house? I have one place, but what if I wanted to do that? I mean, have,
Something like that fits just fine.
so
but
do you do the square footage limit?
Multi-story or, with 50, 75 people in it. Yeah, a smaller type office, maybe. I don't think it should be unlimited.
Well, under machining, there's a 10,000 square foot used in this. Is that just out of R2R, Michael?
Yes,
Okay, I was just curious where that came from.
And that would be a commercial machine shop.
It doesn't say,
not defined.
the guy
I
that
mean-
makes motorcycles in Hendersonville, he's not commercial. He's just a little guy.
I mean,
Puts out those aluminum blocks like crazy.
I'd love to have some machines and stuff. What
10,000
I
square
do,
foot's pretty big.
that's
Well,
pretty
down
big.
below, does it not say maximum building
that's-
size for non-residential is 10,000 square feet? Would that not apply to the offices, buildings,
That's
professional,
a
public?
big office.
And I,
Yeah, I know that. I'm just saying that's there, but
and I just grabbed that because
Right.
10,000 square feet was listed in
Right.
that machining item.
Mhm.
So that, again, that's all up for debate.
yeah, you could say 7,500 square feet for business,
also-
professional, or public.
And
or
also the
5,
mixed
whatever.
use district, I think the current max building size is 15,000. So we came 5,000 down.
Well, I'm stuck on those three and tightening it up a little bit. Items 2, 3, and 4.
1, 2, I would recommend we just simply remove it.
For consensus on that.
Yes.
Everyone's okay with removing self-storage?
Jeff's not. Jeff's going the other
I'm-
direction on us right now.
I'm not necessarily opposed to removing that
Yeah.
because that's not a rural use. That's, something people need. But there are areas that could provide that are more of a commercial type area.
Drive a couple miles
Mhm.
and you'll find a few.
So scratch it.
But anyone
I feel-
already
yes.
existing is gonna be
Grandfather.
grandfathered in, because I know there is one, off of Sweetwater, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So, they would be grandfathered in. So
The other guy pulled his.
the other one is not to be.
He's done. So what about machining in the same conversation, item 3? I mean, that's a big building. Right now, we allow 15,000.
I don't have a strong feeling about this one way or the other, except for maybe the size of the building. And I think
I agree.
that, which maybe we haven't gotten there yet, but maybe that's just change that in all, in all cases. Down there at number 2, I don't know what the right size is. I'm not.
Well, in non-residential, you could have a cap on all of them, which he
Yeah,
does. It just
yeah.
happens to be the same as
No, that's what I'm
machining.
saying. Yeah, I think makes sense. Let's change that cap and make it smaller.
The overall cap or for machining?
Both.
Both.
Okay.
So essentially,
what is-
essentially 3 should just be governed by whatever D.
And in keeping with the rural nature of Mills River, what is the, what is the square foot? I'll ask Brian. Brian, you
Uh-oh.
know this.
No pressure.
What's the square footage of an acre and a half?
Acre and a half?
Yeah.
About 70,000.
So 10,000 doesn't take up a lot of that space,
That's pretty.
so there's plenty of space around it. So I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, but I would
Probably,
also, your number of employees is going to drive what your hardscaping there,
that's
your
true.
light pollution, everything is going to, you're not going to have a ton of employees there, but the bigger that building, the more parking lot, the more infrastructure.
How big is this building approximately?
No idea. The only example I have is, where Hills Machinery is on Old Haywood Road. They put about 4 warehouses or warehousing buildings up there. Those range between 12 and 14,000, I
What
believe.
WNC tool, that's a machining, right? So that,
On Brandy Branch.
yeah,
Yeah, and I just don't know the size of that.
yeah. Well, you would know that. It's well in there anyway, but.
But in this, so those areas, they're allowed up to 15. I would like to see that cut in half
Here,
for rural,
rural,
yes. in
7,500.
rural.
Yeah, there you go.
Whether it's an acre and a half and it's only, 12 or 13% of it for the actual roof, your impact on that acre and a half is a much higher percentage than a home, much higher. Your parking lot, your light pollution, your traffic.
So if somebody wanted to build furniture, for example,
Then
would
they need to
fall
be a
into this-
different district, different zoning district.
or, I mean, they could do it, but under whatever maximum building. size
Whittle,
we-
they could whittle.
Another consideration too is, a variance could come into play in this situation, because remember, you can vary from dimensional requirements if you have just cause, a hardship. So if there was someone whose business would only work in that type of building, there is a pathway for them to petition the Board of Adjustment.
Good reminder that we have that now. Yeah, because that is not special use quasi judicial. I would suggest that we keep that at 7,500, 50% of what it is in the current mixed use. And if someone wants to have a little more furniture and needs 95, they can come to us on a variance.
There you go.
That's the
Mm,
consensus, yeah.
agree with that,
agree
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Number 2
It's
was-
good
And
math.
just apply that down to D2, Michael.
Yes,
If everyone else was following, that's what I would suggest.
D2.
the maximum.
D2
non-
under non-residential maximum building.
7,500.
And then,
Before we move down, sorry, I just wanted to circle back on the tiny park one, the tiny home.
sure.
Number 7 at the top of that page. Are these tiny home parks, park model parks, and RV parks? Do we need all 3 because they are all collectively like a defined thing together, or have we just put 3 separate things together? Because I feel like there was maybe some question marks around the idea of an RV park.
Right.
And I didn't know, can we just eliminate the RV park and leave the other ones, or do they come as a group?
See, to me, tiny home park model and RVs are definitely 3 different
Yeah.
items. No, from experience. They are.
Yeah, it's just listed that way now, which is why it's included, in there like that.
If I'm not mistaken, the tiny home park that we have that was established prior to the ordinance that we do have about
Right.
tiny homes, you know, they're doing all three.
What do you consider you? Is that you park? What do you call in your River Oak? I mean, manufactured
That's a
homes on a
permanent-
leased lot is,
Those are permanent homes.
they're permanent. So RV is
RV
not.
is, to me,
And to,
is a mobile,
Lonnie's point repeatedly over here, that's the one we want out. The short-term RV.
Right.
yeah,
You drive,
yeah.
something that you're
All the time.
driving. The
Sorry?
vehicle
The
part.
long-term.
I've used
Well, if you have a recreational
RVs
vehicle
with-
park,
for
you know,
many,
it's
many
up to the
years.
park owner other than
Really?
guidelines. Sorry, we're talking over each other.
Yeah,
Right.
no,
So the way it's defined currently is they're defined together.
Yeah,
But that doesn't mean you can't strike off RV park, because the standards just happen to apply to all three of them, the development standards. So if you want to just say tiny home parks and park model parks, but you could even say, but not RV parks subject to blah, 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 blah,
Well, see-
blah, that would still work.
tiny home park to me and is what, on
Okay,
down
well.
280,
A Coney Bell, yeah.
a Coney.
Tonyville, yeah. What it was designed to be, but I understand they're actually doing all three now. Haven't been down there because you gotta get permission to go in. But a park model RV is one that, doesn't have self-contained sewage. It has to be hooked to sewage. It's designed to be hooked up to sewage, and you got some park model places over in Hendersonville, and there's hundreds of two in the park model. That's not a tiny home. That's a mobile. It can be disconnected, moved easily to the next park. but
Tiny
it's
home
not
can as well, right?
self-contained.
Yeah.
It's difficult,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I mean, it just, again, every unit is built so differently because there's no
Right.
standard. But
Yeah.
yes, in theory, they're all on a chassis. So in theory, if there's
Yeah.
wheels, they could be towed.
Yeah. all
I
on
believe
chassis.
HUD still has some
All-
governing in your
All
park.
three of them are on
so.
chassis.
Right.
What would govern the density in this?
The regular zoning ordinance, 4 units an acre.
In this new district, we would still keep it at 4 units an acre. If we don't, because you're referencing, I'm assuming this 086 and 088 are what you're
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at on my
talking
computer.
about.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
we're actually not accomplishing a residence breaker and a half. And that, we're actually at a quarter of an acre. I get it, they're tiny homes, totally different impact, but just to point out, the drive-by at 50 miles an hour is there's 4 homes on that 1 acre. Or 12 homes on 3 acres instead of 2 on 3 acres, if you want to.
much smaller units though.
I get that the impact is different. I totally
and
get that. But do we want to change the
But
density?
if there was a mile worth of those, that would be pretty densely packed, right?
That's what I'm saying, driving by, that
Yeah.
doesn't go very rural. to
Can
me.
we eliminate it all?
I think that, yeah, did you eliminate? Is that what you said?
Eliminate all of them, yeah.
Yeah,
In this
right.
district.
in
is-
this
is-
district,
Right,
I'm sure that's
to go back to your point of
right.
of
purpose.
the purpose.
And that's.
I'm
that
not sure
was
that's gonna go
something
over
I was
well,
Gonna
but-
bring up about the RV parks. I can see them from both sides. I mean, a luxury RV park there's not a lot of traffic involved. And it's not, you know,
Did
it's
you see the
by nature.
pushback in Etowah? The perception is not in line with that low impact stuff we're saying could exist. Of course it could exist. That's just not how it works. Have
That's
you been
not
on Highway
pushback.
64 east of North Henderson? So you know what they look like.
I know, yeah, I know what they look like. I remember quite well.
Yeah.
The pushback.
They're
from
not
that.
$200,000 RVs with 100 feet in between.
So is that, you know, looking at the rural nature,
Yeah, it's not in keeping with
RV
it. I would
park,
strike 7.
it's a commercial and it's where there's, you know, there's things going on. It's
mean,
not,
I'm sure everyone knows this, but Oconee is, they don't own real estate there. None of those residents own real estate. You don't own real estate for that matter. On River Oak, you don't own the ground, you don't own the ground that anything's sitting on. It's all leased. And that's why I see, you know, driving by 12 units per 3 acres compared to 2 per 3. I get the size, I get it, I get all that. But your road, your infrastructure, your sewer, where's the sewer going, Jim? I don't know that I want,
So you're saying strike it as well?
I'm saying strike it in that district. I don't have, I'm
agree.
not against these things everywhere.
I
I'm just, the
agree.
point of this district
Right.
is spelled out right
Right.
there.
I'm
Exactly.
ready to strike it. Is there consensus on that?
I think there's
All right.
consensus, yeah.
I had a question mark there for the record, Lisa. I just kept going 2, 3, and 4, 2, 3, and 4. I did have a question mark there, though.
You asked a question and then we somehow kind of
Yep, no,
kept going.
Sometimes we
and
don't
so-
travel at
yeah,
Brian's
okay.
speed.
no.
That's all it is.
My wife told me to stop talking, but
So when it,
hopefully she's not watching right now.
when we're talking about a use allowed under a minor special use permit, it does have to go through the Board of Adjustments. And it's, there's no public comment per se, only the affected property owners. As a fairly recent dog, owner, the kennel and animal boarding facilities, I have a question about that.
Mm.
Do the public, I've been involved, from the city perspective with, a kennel and boarding facility that came through. I mean, there's no traffic, certainly nothing to worry about. But in the residential, the rural residential area, does that use fit? If it does, fine. I mean, it's not a huge impact, except, people get upset about the noise. I mean, if they're boarding cats, it might be different. Occasionally you get some noise out of
What are the,
cat.
what are the questions we would hear in the Board of Adjustments for that?
Um,
Because this is minor special use. So
mhm.
what
The-
questions would we have
the
to
noise,
satisfy?
the noise, the people dropping off, picking up.
So what's the definition on that of we can only hear in the public comments, we can only hear from people who are affected?
only
How far
hear-
does the sound travel?
Yeah, and we would hear, the residents that live nearby, they would be allowed as parties withstanding to give their input. But, and that's a really sticky thing, is that considered, is that something we can really
But I would think
consider
that at
versus
some point in the
federal?
conversation, I'm sorry, Michael, we said we wouldn't talk over and then I just talked
Mhm.
over. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's-
No,
What do you just want to know the standards that need to be met? So the standards are, special use should not be located or developed in such a manner as to adversely affect the health or safety of the persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed use, and will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or public improvements in the neighborhood. Injurious to property could be decrease in property value. Second is establishments requiring a special use permit shall be located, developed, such as to minimize effects of noise, glare, dust, solar
there we
active,
go.
and odor
That's what I was looking for.
on persons residing or working in the neighborhood. 3, not located or developed in a manner as to seriously worsen traffic congestion so as to endanger the public safety. 4, located and developed in a manner, comply with all applicable laws. Located and developed in a manner to be consistent with town plans. Minimize environmental impacts, follow rules for groundwater, surface water, stormwater, wetlands, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the main ones.
So 5 dogs versus 500
50.
can be asked at the Board of Adjustments.
So, and I'm not opposed to it. If my dog's listening, I certainly don't.
I like that it's not allowed by right.
Yeah. So that is the check and balance on that particular one.
Those questions make me
Yes.
feel comfortable letting it go
Mhm.
through minor special use.
But kennel,
Just want to bring it up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
Kennel-
commercial activity.
kennel and animal boarding facilities is kind of a broad term to me. Anyway,
But I'd like to have another one
kind of animal we talking
if they were
about?
good.
We've only got one, yeah, here and there.
Parks and Recreation,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Well, people
Um,
board horses as well, then.
Very
horses,
special.
yeah.
But
I mean, and if you've got the land and that's something you want to do, as long as you do it correctly, and that allays my concern by knowing that it'll go through that process. And
I'm just gonna go back to offices because I heard discussions about limiting the square footage, but I didn't come to a resolution on that.
I think
Is
it was
that something
7,500, right?
just had it default to the blanket max,
Max building size. Okay,
D2.
just checking.
I like it.
I think that's the right thing to do.
I think 6 fits in Mills River, but not in this zoning district. just my opinion, so.
Just so you know, there is one of those in this zoning district already.
Yeah, I realize that.
But
Sometimes
There's
you
pretty
start-
much one of everything that we're
yes,
excluding,
Yeah.
so
that's not.
it's to limit it going forward, right?
Yeah,
So.
you're right. You're a good reminder.
Sometimes you start your business in your garage.
The
and then-
7,500 square
Then it
feet.
grows. Oh, no, it wouldn't be 7,500 square.
I mean-
feet.
No, I mean,
you're-
if that's going to be our max, that's the conversation. Is
Oh.
that out of character for this district?
My thought on a lot of these things, I mean, if Mills River was 200 miles long, it's different, right? We're 21, is it 21 miles from one end to the other? I mean,
Very,
21 square miles, something like 22.
22
square
square, how far is it from Pennsylvania County line to the airport? I have no idea, but my point is you can drive to another district and put where there's a gas station or a repair shop or somewhere else. So I just don't think it fits in this particular zone. But I may be alone.
miles. I think if somebody's got
um,
a garage and wants to do a little work and have do some repairs and make a little money and, not a 7,500 square foot. I mean, I'm not talking about building a big or something, but
this
sometimes,
is also under
sometimes
special
people
use.
start in their yard. Yeah, that's true.
Do you want to put a
and-
different maximum on the building there? To make sure that,
There are other areas you can do that, is what I'm saying. I mean, we're trying to, under your definition, doesn't fit to me underneath that
Yeah.
description, so.
a small working from a shop, from home does fit into this for me.
Yeah,
And that's what I like to protect.
It does.
but is that in outbuildings or whatever?
Is
the
that a
terminology
secondary
one?
use? Is that something that's allowed a home or I know we're
Is it-
beating this
Well,
stuff
it's
to death, but
important,
we need
so,
to when
yeah.
we downzone somebody's property or at least set up the mechanism where that could happen.
The incidental home occupation.
Yeah, like a home business, work from home. Well,
I don't know, that has customers coming.
Customary accessory buildings, private garages, but that's not what we're talking about.
once they get to a certain point,
Non-commercial.
yeah, they'll go look, they'll get successful, get, customers, and then they may want to go
Well,
somewhere
if somebody has a
else.
garage
Yeah.
on their property under this definition here of accessory buildings and they're repairing some cars, I'm not sure we're gonna show up and check everybody who's coming and going from their
But if they've
garage.
got a
Same thing
bunch of,
to my woodworking thing. Here you go, right? Workshop. So if somebody wants to build a piece of furniture in their workshop, that's on their property. That's different. But I would I'd exclude number 6. So.
I could be on board with that. I agree with you. I don't know, again, like how much of a problem it likely is, especially given the special use. But on the other hand, it seems to me there's no reason to include it if there are reasons to exclude it. And
Indeed.
yeah,
I'll agree. I don't.
why agree, like, the idea here again is to, we wanted to start from here, we have unlimited, undefined purpose, and now we're given this opportunity to define the purpose. We might as well start with like the definition that we want.
Right.
And if this is not part of the definition of what we want for rural, then why not just take it out? And there's gonna be opportunities to put it back in if.
It says
there-
not desirable under the map category,
Right.
commercial, and that's commercial. So.
is there consensus?
I would exclude it.
There's one.
I'm fine with
I-
excluding it as
Two,
it's, as this,
three.
yes.
we're excluding.
Mhm. Excluding that particular, so 4. So that's consensus. So
So strike
Six.
C6 automobile. service.
C6, yep. And unless everybody wants a wind turbine in their yard, I guess we probably better leave 7 in case when the grid, if they need to add a transformer
Sure.
and public utilities. Okay.
So
Dimensional
the
requirements,
maximum
that's fine.
height on non-residential, since as Lisa said, we're really fine tuning the starting point of these definitions. Does that need taken down?
Get back to that. 50 feet, yeah.
Item D, 3 or 4, maximum building height 50 feet.
Oh, yeah, there is no 3. It should be,
It should be, it's,
it should
yeah.
be 3,
yeah.
but yeah, gotcha.
It's phantom.
50 feet's pretty tall.
Yeah, I have no concept of that. You have
How
to,
tall is Burning Blush? 20, 22 feet, 24?
I'd say
Yeah,
it's
50
taller
is
than that.
definitely high.
50 is huge. A flagpole is like,
Again, I'm thinking
well,
about.
well,
like,
again, if you're thinking,
building.
right, if you're thinking about, again, visual, rural and so forth, why wouldn't you
It's
cut that,
high.
cut that in
This is-
half
this
or
is-
so,
this
yeah.
is-
or 30 feet or whatever?
machinery's gonna need to be in the,
Well, at
15,
first,
16.
after we just
You're-
concluded on, it seems to me that if we're gonna exclude
Right.
automobile services, then on the same logic, offices and machine assembly really don't make sense in this commercial, as a commercial business. Again, as long as someone can do those things in their workshop, in their outbuildings, in their, in other, on their property, but that's distinguished, as I read it again, distinguishing between a repair garage and yet we're gonna say a machine assembly operation is okay. That doesn't make sense.
I agree with that.
I think that they're either, that's like I think either I think they all go or they all stay, but I don't think we can select between, I think at least 3 and 6 are the same. I guess we already got rid of 2.
I think the only difference between 3 and 6, although I agree with you, is that automobile service repair garages excluding open storage of junked and or inoperable vehicles. There'll be operational vehicles stored temporarily outside of a garage where they're working to fix it, whereas in the machining, all that operation takes place inside. So I think there's a,
That is that is an important distinction.
Mm.
I wasn't 100, but yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's
I
just
guess
this-
if we may eliminate eliminate C3 if we make the building height and square footage such that that becomes impractical anyways without a variance.
I don't know of any building that's 50 feet right here. I can't even
Yeah.
picture one.
It's 5 stories
It's really high.
or 4,
4.
3
only reason-
stories with a,
The only reason I wrote that in, and I think actually our maximum building heights across the different zoning district are not great. For residential in MR30, we allow a house up to 50 feet in mixed use.
But that could be on topography where the backside of it is,
It's measured from the highest point of the foundation.
is it? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So
So in mixed use for non-residential, it's 40 feet. Mixed use right now for residential, you could build an 80-foot house if you wanted to, but there's no dimensional requirement.
there's no
so I-
setback requirements either, right?
No, so I just split the middle again and threw in 50.
you want to say 40?
In our
I'd
rural
say 30, that's
residential
3-story
district,
home, right?
in rural residential, I can't imagine,
I think 30 would be.
30 is
Yeah.
still crazy high.
It is,
That's really,
But it
Probably
does-
not going to have a peaked roof if it's a
but it does allow 3 stories.
commercial
so-
building unless
Right.
it's like an office.
well, this is we're still in,
And does that include
non-residential
the
here.
peak of the roof, Michael?
So this is non-residential. We're not talking,
No, I was just kind of getting my
Talking
mind
commercial
what the size of
use.
a 3-story house.
I'm sorry.
30 feet
Yeah.
Max
consensus
for
30 feet?
non-residential.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, 30 feet it is.
Again, there's always, if someone has some
Yeah, they
blueprint
need,
for
Sure.
something that's bigger, they can always ask for bigger because when I have like some nice high pointed eave or something.
So
So
since
we
that's
can
the
do
next
that
point,
with
Michael, can I just
50.
clarify that out loud again for myself? They're currently, top of the next page is setbacks. We currently have no setbacks in mixed use.
Yeah, I took a call today. A single family dwelling going on a lot and they wanted to know where to put it. And
Anywhere,
I said, wherever you want.
anywhere. You see how close my garage is to Schoolhouse Road? So this creates setbacks, which I'm a huge fan of. When you're driving through, picture Sevierville, Tennessee. And it's just thunk, 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 with no setbacks. I'm a huge fan of these setbacks. So the 75 in this is just Boylston Highway, Michael?
Correct, for non-residential.
Correct, we're still in non-residential. So, but that's only Boylston there, that's the only one, or is it also Haywood?
From a perspective, and Mike, you may not know this, but the new, whatever the building is beside the fire department, how far is that from
That's
Boylston? Because that's,
150,
about
it's
150.
a good
Well,
way.
and it's off the right of
Back-
way and there's
back
a,
from the road.
mhm.
I
The
think there's
tile.
at
you
least
mind.
100-foot right of way
Yeah.
there.
So
if
back
not
from the
more.
asphalt isn't really, when you have a state highway, he can tell you
It's
the
the right of
utility
way.
easements, the right of way, everything they own it.
Right.
So you're
So
back
where,
off
where does the that's my question is, where does the setback start?
the edge of
Generally
the
it's
right
from
of
the
way.
right of way.
Okay.
The edge of the right of way. The road's not always in the center of the right of way.
Okay.
So don't ever look at the asphalt. It's the edge of the right of way.
150 was right on.
Yeah, perfect.
And that's from the right of way?
The edge of the right of
Mhm.
way.
Ah, gosh, I think we should
I think
expand
you
that.
gotta
then.
start with that then.
Yeah, 'cause that seems pretty close, so. And it's probably because it's a large building.
That's a big
so-
From
That's
a
a-
major street.
It's a
Where-
130,000 square foot
We
building.
define major as a primary route.
No, just anything having more than 2 lanes, I believe.
So
once-
Haywood will
once
go into
Haywood
that.
is widened, it will become a
Mhm.
major street.
But it doesn't make sense to be less than that to me, but.
Well,
I
there's
know it's-
currently nothing. They could have been on that thing.
Well, I know, but I mean, just from perspective,
Right.
if you're riding down there, I'm thinking that's pretty, I know it's a large building, it takes, a few minutes.
That is a Lowe's
to
with
get
the
past
garden
it,
center,
so yeah,
130
so-
square feet, 130,000 square feet.
So I would make that the minimum,
The 75 or the 150?
with a 150 on a major road. I mean, that's what that is. We're talking about it would be 75 feet closer
Half.
if we live it, yeah.
Well, we wouldn't allow anything that big, but your point's taken.
You'd have to park on the road.
Just,
mainly.
just playing devil's advocate, what if you're building on a 1.5 acre property and
You-
you don't
you
have that
can't.
space?
You can't meet that. if
Yeah,
it's
well,
For commercial,
Mhm.
it may not fit.
For non-residential.
Yeah. or
We're not using the word commercial.
Non-residential, excuse me, non-residential may not work. 150 feet, could that be,
Won't
could there
be
be a
able to
variance
reach it
for that? Could there
That would
a
be an
variance
undue
for that?
hardship.
Yeah, possibly.
So that's something can be varied. Dimensions and setbacks can be applied for.
If it were an acre and a half rectangle away perpendicular, then you could meet that and your side setbacks become more difficult, but a parallel one. Because as you know, an acre and a half, it has the right of way in that. For ownership, the person who owns the acre and a half owns the land within the right of way.
Depends,
Right. Not a fee simple.
not fee simple. If it's a secondary road, schoolhouse road,
But those are in here. So that's still 60 feet.
it's a primary road, it's fee simple.
Yeah, you're
It's actually state property.
state highways, right?
No, it can be state maintained and be on an easement. And that's
Right.
another discussion. I'd have to open up a Dr. Pepper to get into that. It's a little late.
But the state highways, they own to the edge of the right of.
Primary roads, yeah,
Okay.
most primary roads. And the ones here in this area, which would be NC 191 and
280.
NC 280. Those are fee simple, so the state property goes to the edge of the right of way. Schoolhouse Road, Brannon Road, some of the roads
Nothing
out that
there.
way, it's an easement. So the property owner generally owns to the center of the road, but the state has an easement that may be 60
But so
feet,
that's my
30
point.
feet.
If your
Yeah, yeah.
ownership goes to the center of the road, even though the county doesn't tax you for that right of way section, as you
Right.
know, the setbacks, your space, your acre and a half, you've already lost
You've already lost.
20 to
That's
26
correct.
feet
Mhm.
already.
Yep, that's correct.
You don't have, so your density's still gonna be, so
That could put you in a bind.
that's
when
why
you're
I'm
going from
concerned
edge to
about putting
right
it
of way.
more too
On,
far.
on a primary road, 150 feet, that may
I
be a
agree
bit
if you have an
much.
acre and a half, but if you buy 30 acres along the road
Sure.
and you only have a 75-foot setback and it's a large building, then you have worse than what we have.
It's
next
not
to
gonna be
fire
bigger than
station.
7,500 square feet.
Well, there you go. There you go.
And- Yeah, in this.
What about
this
100
zone
foot
area.
on your main roads?
Okay. All right.
Well, you got,
All right, what was the consensus
he
on
needs an
that?
answer.
Front yard
I'm not sure
setback?
we have one.
Okay, that's fine.
I think, personally, I think 150 is a bit much when you've already got 100 foot of right of way, so probably 100 feet maybe I could go with.
Michael, can I ask, is this how Henderson County has it in their R2R?
For non-residential?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
This is what we have currently. I'll have to look up what theirs is.
That's okay. I was just curious if there was already a precedent nearby.
I think theirs are
I like
actually-
that,
I
having
think theirs are
precedent.
much less restrictive.
Okay.
So you want to say 100? Would there be a consensus for 100 to start
Yeah.
with?
That's fine with me, yeah.
100, 100, 100
You can go.
On your 4 lanes,
on 4 lanes.
Commercial problem,
Yeah, county.
4 lane non-residential.
County, it's
I
50
meant
or 60.
non-residential. yeah.
Okay.
Consensus for 100.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that is always something that a party could seek a variance on if needed because
Okay.
of the shape of the lot.
So for residential, maximum building height is 40. Minimum front yard setback from major streets, 40. And we good with that?
The ADUs would have to be subject to these setbacks as well? Okay.
And they would be behind generally. You don't
Are we
wanna
on
have them-
residential now?
Yeah, the
Resident.
E is where Jeff's at, if you're looking for that. Dimensional requirements dash residential.
And those are those are existing at the moment?
No,
there's
not in mixed
being-
use.
Yeah.
Your house can be on the property line.
Oh, that's
The
right.
fire
said that
department doesn't like
earlier.
that at all, but you can.
Okay. I would limit the height, though.
40.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm
Right.
saying we had 30 in the commercial, wouldn't we do the same?
I'm okay with residential being,
Generally, residential has a peaked roof, and this does
Oh, that counts. I
include
guess.
the
I'm
peaked
okay
roof,
with
right?
residential.
40 goes up to the highest point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that
So,
makes sense then.
I would say 30 feet without a roof.
I got
but
you.
Even 12 is going to put you over that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Miles of ranch
So-
homes. I got you.
mhm.
ranch with a hip.
40 should be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the residential setbacks as you have them, Michael, for what that's worth.
I agree.
And the ADUs are subject to them as well. The city of Hendersonville has some variances they use often for ADUs, but they can come in for a variance.
And we keep moving down.
That's
Um,
it.
accessory dwelling unit standards, we talked about those. No one has any issues with that.
I agree with the 60% or 1,000, whichever is less. I mean, that's really the biggest point of conversation here, unless someone feels they should be allowed to be larger or a different percentage. Because it's whichever is less, I believe.
So the idea is that your accessory dwelling unit is gonna be an accessory, not another dwelling unit. It's not a copy of the
Correct.
dwelling unit. It's
So-
gonna be less.
So if you have a 4,000 square foot house like in Mills River Crossing, you can't have 60% of that. You only
Mhm.
get up to 1,000. So again, it limits how high you can go. But I up to the percentage up, because if you have a 1,000 square foot house, at least you can have a 600 square foot one.
There's no limit on being able to rent that out, though, is there?
The town doesn't regulate short-term rentals in any way.
Or even
People-
long-term rentals of it.
Oh, that's true.
Right.
When someone pulls a permit for that, there's no communication with the health department, is there, from our town?
A permit for what?
They're gonna tap into the existing septic with that ADU.
Well.
Oh, we would,
Well, you gotta have a building permit for
yeah.
it.
So, but there is communication from us, because you don't have your hands in the septic conversation at all, right?
No, I
Right.
mean, they would need a zoning permit from the town before they can begin any permitting with the county, including well and septic. So
Well,
the
but they were gonna have it in this case. Let's say they already
an
live there.
extension.
Yeah, they already
But
live in the main house,
but-
and they're gonna put a guest home in the back. And they're
But
gonna
your
connect it.
septic permit, existing septic permits for a number of bedrooms.
Mhm.
And when you add an accessory dwelling unit, you get more bedrooms.
You are adding bedrooms. That's why I'm asking.
You'd have to
We're,
That's
set
what
up
I would
plan
think.
Or, public utilities.
It'd be caught in the building permit process would.
That's
catch
my
that.
question.
Yeah,
It w- it
because
w-
they would basically say, okay, you're adding this much more
Else
flow.
more.
What does your system
That's right.
accommodate? And if they require them to upsize it.
So
that'd
during
be
new
the-
construction, I know it would be
Mhm.
because there's no way around that. But
Mhm.
so if Albie's coming out to inspect, he's
Ye-
probably gonna,
Even just like a remote, in addition to an existing single family home, you still need a building permit for it and they would do the same calculation.
okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay, that being said, I do believe that we have a few changes we would ask you to make before we vote on this, as to recommend it to council. So that.
Michael,
being
that
said-
was great, by the way.
Thank you so
Are we,
much.
are we set
Did a
on,
great job.
are we set on the acre and a half then? I think I'm the only one apparently that wants to do 2 acres, so I don't know if we settled that, but
I think if we go forward with an acre and a half, is our suggestion to council after the public input, if we go in there with 2, that may raise a lot more concerns. That's me personally. Of course, I've been advocating for, the smaller lot sizes, but,
I would love to see it too.
mhm.
I would too.
yeah, I would too.
So just for the
And
record, I would love to.
I would say, that's the place where if if it's a matter, it just seems like if the public cares, if the public wants it to be an acre and a half, then the town council should listen to what the public has to say about that. But if after being invited to speak about it, and to comment on it, if the public is silent, I don't see why our recommendation shouldn't be our recommendation. And last session, I think we did all kind of collectively come around to 2.
The
'Cause
only
you
reason I
can't
started
go
with
from-
1.5 is in the hopes that that would get accepted, but
Yeah.
I think the starting higher for leaving room to negotiate was the approach we were.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even fully in front of council yet. I understand maybe their initial reaction was, well, that could be hard to swallow, but on the other hand, it's consistent with the land planning use map that.
I mean, I may have
often-
nodded off, but I remember a pushback on the accessory dwelling from the town councilwoman. And then I don't remember who the council, Jeff, maybe pendulum swinging too far back and forth. And then the mayor about commercial uses when we talked about residential only, but I don't remember a lot size, but I could have missed it. So, but anyway, I think we should, whatever we leave here with, that's what I'm supporting. But I think we need to kind of settle on that.
If you
so.
want, yeah, if you want to change it, that's
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
people. Someone else needs to speak up.
If one more person wants 2 acres, then that's a consensus. That's maybe not, okay, let me back up.
That's a majority, not a
Consensus
consensus.
Majority.
is something we can live with. A majority, I don't have to live with it, but I'm voted down. So I want to make that clear. Consensus, if it's 2 acres and, if that's what it is, then that's what we would ask. So we've got 3 for 2. I'm for 1.5.
For 1.5. I think it's more.
More
practical.
than I have to.
No
So-
pressure. Think it over for a while. Take your time.
So
Yeah.
I would, yeah. Mhm.
The county was R2 here.
And I agree with Mr. Kimsey. I would lean towards an acre, but you know, but that's, I really, really, really hope the public comes and gives their opinions on this, weighs in, because they're the ones going to be affected. I'm not in this district. Unless I'm rezoned to this, it's not going to affect me. I want to think about how it affects.
Well, it could affect more than
pe-
just this.
the rural
This is-
character
This
will-
is just the zoning. We're not talking about applying any of it yet.
Mhm.
And so, but also Lisa, public can show up and say, I know you're recommending 1.5, but we want 2. So I guess.
That's
And if
true.
could
that
happen as
happens,
well, so.
that's because that's the people that are going to be affected.
That's what
And-
we're about here. Thoroughly discuss it.
Mhm.
I look to see. And then put a
1.5
what
it
to
is.
say.
Well, that's why I think about, Billy, I get you. Folks who've been here and have that acre and carve off an acre for a child and all that. But when I think of, the new, Mills River Crossing, for example, just use that as an example. 6/10 of an acre or an acre, they're still gonna look roughly the same, right? And so if we want more space, and we had the little thing last time with open space was the biggest definition of
Right.
rural. That's why I would at least wouldn't do an acre, I'd do at least an acre and a half. So, I mean, I'm still two, but
Yeah.
I'm just telling you why I wouldn't I'm just telling you why I wouldn't do an acre. So
And to preserve
not picking
that-
any
that
buildings.
is it necessary for us to reference, I don't know what you called it, but there's like the family. Yes, would that create some comfort if we specifically referenced that we're not superseding that and that this would all be subject to that? So meaning,
The family subdivision process basically still requires it to meet the town's minimum lot size. So if you establish 1.5 acres as the minimum lot size for
Okay.
that zoning, it would still apply. If you want to change that, that would then be a subdivision code text amendment, which would be a whole other separate
Oh, okay.
action. But it could, you could have it be less strict for family subdivisions through a separate amendment.
So if there's a family subdivision where the current minimum is an acre, that's already grandfathered in.
You mean if it's already occurred?
If it's already.
If
planned,
anything's already
Anything
platted,
that's platted would be, yeah, grandfathered in. Right now, you can do it up to 30,000 square feet.
well, acre and a half. And then we'll see what the public has to say.
I think that's
Acre and
what one of the
3/4.
Councilman mentioned. He'd like to see more public input.
Yeah,
I don't know
And-
how they can
and
get that, but hopefully.
acre and a quarter. And that's,
I'll
you
teach
know,
you more
on
than
that
that.
note, as planning board members, you certainly have an opinion and you're certainly welcome to come to the council meeting and give your opinion. Speaking for the planning board, in my opinion, that would be someone who the planning board designates to speak for the planning board. And I will, even if I don't agree with something, I will speak with what the planning board has decided to do. As a private citizen and private individual, then I may have other ideas, but,
Bring two hats.
Yeah.
yeah, bring two hats, have multiple personalities, one for every occasion. So, just keep that, feel free to come talk, give your opinion. Just be careful of the words, the planning board decided this, or the planning board says this. You know, we want to be careful and make sure that that's what's in the record if we make that statement. Anyway, so thank you for that. I think we're finally ready to move to the next item.
Well, no, so,
Okay, hold
So-
on.
no, I'm saying,
Uh-huh.
we know all the changes there. We have to draw it up and wait 30 days to come back and vote on it, or can we vote on as you've written it with the changes that we've agreed on? And vote on it from there, right now?
You could,
That would be
So I make that
a
motion.
motion of the board. So there's, your
I'll second
motion
it.
is to
Approve text
recommend the text
24-02 as written with the changes that we've agreed upon, however you want me to word it. That's my motion. So
And we have a second. Do we have any discussion on that? Do we want to? With no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye. That sounds like unanimous.
well, I'm glad I prepared the statement of consistency because that's next.
I'm glad you did.
didn't want that to go to waste.
So if
ahead.
you're okay with how I've
You talk.
Do I have to
drafted
do
it,
it?
attachment
No.
B,
No.
just
Oh,
need a
Yeah.
Oh, no, I
motion to
did that.
adopt the statement of consistency for TXT 2402 as presented.
Okay, so, everyone has this in front of it. Should I read it into the record or, okay? Okay. If anyone's listening, it's in the package for tonight. Do we have a motion to approve the statement of consistency?
Make a motion.
Mr. Oliver, second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Ross, we have second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so there's a 7-0 vote. And that is approved. Do we need to take a break? We've been at this almost 2 hours. Or do we want to press on? Do we want to,
I'll
we've
just
got
say the
10 more items.
the rezoning item is probably the most important we discussed tonight. I can run through the comp plan amendment really quickly.
I like that.
But it's
Sure.
at the board's pleasure.
Yeah, that's fine.
I would say let's do that, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, good discussion. So very quick summary. At the April meeting, you directed staff to draft up the future land use map and comp plan amendment, basically removing commercial crossroads from the Ray Hill Boylston Highway area. Staff has drafted that. And we've also made changes to the comp plan, changing rural residential to rural agricultural, so there's no confusion with the new zoning district we're drafting. So attachment A is the current Flume future land use map. Attachment B begins with the actual changes. So you can see attachment B has the name change, rural residential to agricultural. Same with attachment C. And then I have two options for the actual Flume amendment. Option 1, which is attachment D, solely just removes the commercial crossroads around that area that was identified around Ray Hill and Boylston Highway. The green doesn't exactly match, but that's the intent, is that it's no longer commercial
Mhm.
crossroads and then now is rural residential or rural agricultural.
Agriculture.
I think I talked about this when we just had one of the mixed use discussions
Yeah.
before. Option 2, which is attachment E, also removes all that same area, but adds a little bit of commercial crossroads area to the Gash Road area to account for existing businesses. So if and when you do the rezoning action, and if and when you choose to rezone to neighborhood commercial there, it's supported. And basically, I extended it just to the Maple Valley manufactured mobile home park. So if they wanted to make improvements, they could. It would still be special use permit. I included the property around the car sales business and some of the vacant land there. Rise Construction, which is actually a pretty big general contractor in the area. They have an office that across from the fire station that was not included. And then there were a couple parcels between the the concrete plant, basically that middle light purple area that I added as well.
Okay.
So my recommendation is for option 2, attachment E. I just think that
Yeah.
kills two birds with one stone,
Yep.
but again, it's at the board's pleasure.
I like the second one.
There's also a planning board statement of consistency.
Yep, and
That's
I
it.
agree with, okay.
So E is the one we're looking at over here at this end of the table that we're sharing here that I've circled that one. That one expands Gash Road and then creates the agriculture at Ray Hill. Both. That's the one that makes the most sense to me.
Right, correct.
Makes
Same.
most sense to me.
Right. The difference is you expand the Gash Road intersection.
There's a couple of good.
Right.
And that would help protect the uses that are already there.
They're already there. Yeah. So if they need to make changes in the future, they're not going to
Mhm.
be restricted.
And it supports rezoning that to the
Yeah, it
proper
protects the
zone.
rural nature of the area that's there right now.
All right,
I like
so
it, Michael.
are we good with that? Do we need any discussion?
I'm good with that.
If someone would like to make a motion to accept or to approve the
Both the map on attachment
The
E
map
and the statement of consistency in
statement.
attachment F, Michael.
well,
So-
we'll do the statement of consistency separately.
I'm sorry, let me
right.
rephrase that. F goes with any of them. I'm sorry, the statement of consistency is for any of them? Oh, this is something else totally.
Recommend approval of comprehensive plan and future land use map as presented specifically at,
E, got it.
and I'm just gonna include in that, but change, if you're okay with rural residential agricultural.
Absolutely.
Okay, would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that Michael just said, adopting attachment E.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Ross, Mr. Oliver, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the statement of consistency is attachment F to this. And basically it's the proposed comprehensive plan is consistent with the following elements of the town making, and those elements are listed. Would someone like to make a motion that we approve the statement of consistency?
I will make a motion to approve the statement of consistency.
Thank you, Ms. Marino. All right, second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So a 7-0 vote. All right, we have one more item, and this is rezoning. And this is gonna bring some more discussion in. Is this something we want to deal with tonight? Or my understanding is that we could table it?
The one item I'd really need input on tonight is the
Okay.
meeting date. So I asked council in a different meeting about their preferences for this public input session. And they basically said, we don't need a joint meeting, have the planning board come up with a date that works. And we will just advertise it as a planning board meeting where a quorum of council may be present as attendees.
Perfect.
Sounds-
So basically we need to discuss when this public input meeting for the rezoning will happen. We're planning to basically mirror the Parks Master Plan outreach process where a postcard was sent out to every, I think, in-town resident. So Kevin's working on pulling the parcel data, mailing data for the affected areas and the potential rezoning. We will mail postcards to those folks, advertising the date, and then having a online survey link and surveys available at town hall, just like the Parks Director did.
And,
We need to
and
come up with a date.
just to make it clear that any Mills River resident, of course, would be more than welcome to
yes.
attend. It's just for the purposes of, keeping the costs to, the people that are directly affected would get the mailings, but
That's
any
correct.
other Mills River resident.
And we'll advertise
and
on
if-
Facebook,
yeah.
website, the newsletter, we'll push it out via all channels. But again, one of the most important things I heard from council is if we're going to affect the zoning and
Mhm.
property rights of these individuals, they
We
wanted to
need
hear
input.
directly from them.
What's the minimum timeout you need to do all that?
About a month.
So
So
June 4th
we-
is the new, is the
Well,
next.
that'd even be tight. So I was hoping we'd look towards the end of June. Yeah, June 4th, the regular meeting, I think would
Regular
be
meeting.
tight. We were talking about maybe a special meeting in July because now I know normally we don't meet in July, but that way we wouldn't be competing against any other meetings and staff would have the time to get ready for all
And
of
get-
that.
July 9th is the first Tuesday after the week,
Ah.
the holiday.
Yes, or if it's the board's pleasure, you could do your August regular meeting. Your meetings are getting busier the next few months though, because we've got 2 rezonings for the
Mhm.
next meeting, including a conditional rezoning. Anyway,
I
I'm
would-
okay with a special meeting.
I like July
I'm in
9th.
favor. If it's July 9th, that's fine with me.
It's the second Tuesday in July.
So are we,
oh, okay. Sorry,
Sorry.
we have a conflict with the 9th here.
Is
Okay.
there?
but we can pick any date, right? We don't have to.
Doesn't have to be a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had thrown out July 16th.
So, so the step-by-step of this, because the whole point is wanting to rezone this area that we've talked about. So, and what are we at a point of recommending the change to the zoning of this area? Do we have to go through this public meeting process first, or have we done that?
If the planning board wanted to, you could take action on the rezoning tonight and recommend it to council. But because feedback from council was very clear that they want to hear from the people first, that's just the direction. I'm
And
going.
that's fine. But what I think amongst this group, what we're saying is what we just adopted as a new zone is what we want to enact
Mhm.
here, right?
That would
And that's
be
what the public
intent.
meeting would be about.
Mhm.
And then after the public meeting, we would make a recommendation to council.
And if during the council process to create this new zone, if there are changes there,
Right.
public input there, of course, that would be reincorporated. We would meet back. So we want to make sure we're far enough out to address any concerns or anything that council wants to add. But the venue for this meeting, would we maybe go to Mills River School
I've not even thought of that. I mean, I figured it would be here just because we're here and this is where we have our AV capabilities. I mean, we do have the ability to broadcast on the TV out in the lobby, obviously. But
I mean, I would like to see, it's gonna be a long meeting.
So we have a
But
public
I would
meeting
like to
first,
see
and
the-
based on that, based on all of that input, then we'll get together and create what we're gonna recommend to council.
and again, it's up to the planning board. I mean, we can still refine the specific areas. I'm just using, I think, the potential zoning area we had to at least, so we can use GIS to pull the mailing date, addresses.
Works for
It,
me.
it may be that quorum of people from the rest of the MRMU will show up and say, what about us?
Yeah, good.
You know, we may want to be included in that also. And
Yeah, that was one of the questions town council asked.
Mhm.
That
So you're thinking the 16th?
That was just a date we threw out. Patty's not available on the 9th.
16th works for me, for what that's worth.
And
That's
that
fine.
gives,
Of
gives us enough
July.
time.
How about the
won't make it.
16th of July?
Correct.
Yes.
Tuesday, July 16th.
Probably, what, 6:30, 7?
Oh, I am not here that night. I'm out of town that week. Sorry. That week of July 15th, I won't be here.
If it can be any night, why, and you wouldn't need 30 days, you need 30 days from when you mail it out, or 30 days from tonight, or?
I mean, it's hard to gauge. I've not done this before. I based it off of, what our parks director did for the master plan. So I think 30 days is the absolute minimum, but, you know, I also, want to give the public time to kind of digest it. I've not accounted for mailing time.
so,
If
you
we
know,
could just, if we could do it the prior, if the board is available the week of the 8th, not the 9th, but
Yeah.
like the 10th or the 11th, which is Wednesday or Thursday of that month. So we will have the opportunity we will have had 2 meetings.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
Council does.
again, I don't mean to schedule it around my vacation plans, but if the
Mm.
10th, the 11th works.
Council will have a meet. I know council doesn't normally meet, but they do meet once in July for a very quick meeting, and they will be meeting on the 11th. And it's basically to charge the taxpayer to get tax collections.
So the 11th is out.
So 11th's out. And the 9th was out for y'all, Patty.
And
Could already
Okay.
do it.
So not to exclude you, Lisa, just curious, is there anyone else that has a conflict on the 16th? No one else.
I don't on the 10th or the 16th, so.
Obviously, ideally, everyone would be there, but
The 10th works. Yeah, for us.
the 10th, that's a Wednesday night.
so we'll have our meeting on the 9th, Tuesday, and then,
no,
no, we don't have a meeting on the 9th.
we don't have a
Oh,
meeting
sorry,
in
there are
July
no
at all.
Meetings in July at all.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so so we would just have, yeah,
Yeah, this would just be,
okay,
A special
gotcha,
call
I see, that's what
meeting.
but you suggested the 9th, because that's our normal date, okay, yeah.
So after the,
10th
after the
potentially.
public meeting on July 10th, when would the planning board get together to come up with a recommendation to council at the next scheduled meeting,
Yeah,
or
it'd be
can
the
we call a
August.
special meeting for that as well?
Then
I would think the regular meeting on August 6th. But again, I mean, the planning board can do.
Well, if our next meeting, if we wouldn't be meeting about it until August 6th, then we could also go later in July. There's not a need to go that much. We can push it later rather than whatever.
Well, the 10th seems to work for everybody.
Oh, okay, well,
I
I'm
think
good with the
everyone
10th.
said, I didn't hear any no's on the 10th.
The only reason I want to nail down the date is because then we can start designing. the
Right.
postcard.
Yeah, I mean, that's 60 days out, so, or more. I don't know what today is. so.
that's
The
a,
ideal
that's a
time.
Wednesday though.
6:30. I'm
6:30?
6:30.
well, if it's
Change
gonna-
all meetings to 6:30.
If it's gonna be
Yeah.
late, you think it's gonna be a long meeting though? Maybe we don't want to start at 6:30.
Change them all to 5 then, whatever.
Probably ought to,
Start at 5?
we got to give people a chance to get home from work.
Yeah, it needs to be at least 6 or 6:30.
I,
I'd say 6 of
And it's gonna be.
I would like to raise, some people go to church on Sunday night, on Wednesday
Oh,
nights.
you're right.
So I would, like to consider that.
It's a consideration too, yes.
We want people to be able to get here and
I mean, if we're not making, to Lisa's point, if we're not making any, we're not meeting again to finalize this until the 6th, it doesn't matter when we meet.
so we could push it back.
So 16th doesn't work. You're gone that whole week, Lisa?
So the
Yes,
23rd,
I could do the 23rd, yes.
23rd of July.
The 23rd of July.
And that'll be about 6 weeks from now, right? Am I count that right? I was
No.
wrong.
That's a
That'd
lot
be-
longer than that.
That'd be 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, late June would be 6
3rd of
weeks.
July now.
What was the conflict for July the 11th?
Town meeting.
Council,
Oh, that is the meeting. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We don't want to crash their meeting for this.
We're gonna crash it anyway.
It will be there. Well,
Is there anything else in our normal June meeting? You said we have some
Yeah.
heavy stuff coming up,
two
so,
two rezonings.
okay.
So there's a
Okay.
standard rezoning from light industrial to mixed use in the Brandy Branch Park. And then there's our town's first conditional rezoning for a
Uh-oh.
multifamily development.
Okay.
So
We don't want to, we don't, yeah,
We were good for the 23rd, right?
of July.
yeah, July 23rd.
All right, Tuesday, July 23rd.
And then it'll
6
be
or
2
6:30?
weeks later. Let's do 6. Are y'all okay with 6?
Okay,
Give people time to get home from work and get over here, maybe grab a Scooby snack on the way out the door. And,
23rd.
and then maybe have pizza for the board if it's a long meeting. Have a break back here in the back room.
Yeah.
Hint,
Yeah.
hint.
Not a good idea.
Oh, no.
Um,
And as of now, this will be the venue and we can accommodate, what, 50 people,
100,
100 people?
what the wall says, the fire marshal says.
And, and if, based on the number of responses you get for, I mean, you'd be able to gauge the interest to an extent based on, if people, because you said there's gonna be a survey off
Yeah,
as well, right?
My hope is that we'll get people to fill out the survey and then we'll even compile the results. So we will even present the survey results to y'all at that meeting. And then if there are individuals that want to additionally comment or didn't do the survey and just want to come, it would be open game for everyone.
So this is the planning.
Is
board
the
meeting,
survey going to have
council there.
questions, specific questions
Council
on it?
there. Yeah.
Would, what size lots, what uses, are there any uses specific, things like that?
Yes,
Or is it just going to be, okay,
yeah.
good.
Towns considering a rezoning
Mhm.
action, would you be in favor 1 to 10 of limiting uses? Something along those lines.
And
Minimum
then-
lot size is looking to change. Currently, it's 30,000 square feet, 0.69 acres. Would you support 1 to 10 going to 1.5 or 2?
Mhm.
Well, now we're saying 1.5 though, right?
6.
Yes,
I'll be really.
Yeah, I want to make sure, because
No,
I
you're
thought,
right.
We're saying
Yeah.
1.5.
you're giving me hope again. I thought maybe I
At
missed
least it got us
something.
back to 1 1/4 at one point down there. It was going the wrong way. with us, too.
Okay,
All right, so that's the date. The only other thing I wanted to mention, because this was just kind of thrown together, I think at the last minute. When we defined the zoning boundary, I think Mr. Ross had mentioned this, we had originally drawn the line on Old Turnpike Road. I've changed that to Kimsey because most of that is in the Upper Mills River critical area of the watershed. So the minimum lot sizes there are 80,000 square feet anyway. And again, we originally started just with the southern corridor, so I didn't want to expand it too much, but are you guys okay with that change? Basically, it's, if you can see my mouse, it's this.
You're Kimsey from Old Turnpike to South Mills River?
Yeah, let me just zoom in.
Yeah, there you go.
So I
yeah.
think originally,
Yep.
oh, great.
hate it when that happens.
Don't save it.
So I
Yeah.
think originally, when we kind of discussed it quickly at the last meeting, it was going up Old Turnpike, but there's not a lot of development that could occur here because a lot of it's built out with existing residences anyway. And because it's already limited by the Upper Mills River critical area watershed, I just drew it up Kimsey instead, if that's okay with the board.
That's
I think that's
fine with me.
Okay,
I'm either that or all of them mixed use. I'm one or the other.
well,
And we may get
We'll
the
get there.
input
Yeah,
from the
so,
public.
so yes is my,
okay.
Yeah, this is just to help guide you also, like which
I got full
addresses.
addresses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, those are the two pieces of input I needed for the rezoning. Again, you're welcome to discuss it further if you want.
Okay. That being said, we don't need to make or take any action tonight on this item. So
Do we need to do a motion to? table?
staff updates. Yeah, let me find my,
Oh, could we just do a motion to table just for the record?
okay, the chair would like to entertain a motion to table this.
which item is it?
This is,
New business C.
from mine.
CR 2402, and there's no time limit. It's not like the 60-day time limit because again, the planning board initiated this. It's your own action.
It's our own action,
Make a
so,
motion, we table it.
all right, Mr. Foster.
I'll second it.
Mr. Ross, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, additional items, board comments?
I pose,
Thanks. I would specifically like to say thank you. Y'all do great work. Thank you for your patience tonight.
I will second that.
All right, staff update.
Just that there's the two rezonings.
Mention
next
that.
meeting.
That was
That's
it.
Okay, with that being said, was there is there a
To
motion?
adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Ms. Marino, and thank you, Mr. Foster. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you too, Patty. I know, that